Is stress preventing your weight loss? Maybe, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves with this idea. Because for most people who aren't losing weight or losing body fat, it's not because of stress, it's because their diet is all over the place and their training is inconsistent at best or absent at worst. So in this case, don't use stress as a scapegoat for not getting the results you want. You'd have to sort out your basic nutrition and exercise habits first, and see what happens. But for some of us who struggle, in spite of having mastered the basics, or so to speak, it could well be stress as a rate limiting factor as to why you're not getting the results you want. So let me explain some of the things that, if you think this applies to you, let me explain some of the things that could be happening. Uh, when faced with a stressor, your body secretes glucocorticoids, which are steroid hormones produced by the adrenal glands in the body, the main one being cortisol, otherwise known as the stress hormone. Um, Now, what glucocorticoids can do in excessive amounts when too much is produced in response to stress is that they can inhibit the effect of another hormone called leptin. Um, and leptin plays a role in setting the hormonal stage for fat loss to occur in the body, essentially. So, if you look at it, what the situation we might be presented with is excessive stress leading to an excessive release of cortisol, which inhibits leptin, and this leads to a situation leaving you more hungry and less satisfied from food throughout the day, and an increased likelihood for you to eat more than you should because your hunger signals are they're not very well regulated and they're sort of all over the place a bit. Um, yes, there's that. Research has also shown that sleep deprivation, which is one of the biggest stressors that we face in this day and age, that yeah, sleep deprivation can decrease the amount of body fat we burn for fuel. So just imagine that, even though your output, your expenditure of calories each day might be the same. Imagine if less of those calories were burned from fat and more were derived from tapping into muscle mass and bone or other lean tissue. Well, you're not going to look very good, are you? Because you may lose weight, but you're not really going to be losing any fat, or not as much fat. You're not going to get lean. So sleep's very important. And a third thing to really strongly bear in mind is the effect of stress on the thyroid. In response to stresses, the adrenal glands will upregulate cortisol and epinephrine, which is, in other words, adrenaline. And it does this so that we can adapt to the stressful situation, or the perceived stressful situation. Now, hold on to that thought for a second. The thyroid is what regulates our metabolic output. Our metabolism is either high or low or somewhere in the middle. Our thyroid plays a large part in that. So a lower thyroid output would mean a lower metabolic rate, and that we would burn less calories over the course of the day, consequently losing less fat. Now, how stress fits into this is that elevations in cortisol, which go too high, can suppress the release of thyroid stimulating hormone and prevent thyroid hormone, in any case, from binding to thyroid receptors and actually having any effect, or having maximal effect in the body. Adrenaline, also produced in response to stress by the adrenal glands, can prevent T4, which is thyroid hormone, from being converted into the more active and potent thyroid hormone T3. So this was a bit of a sciencey, long-winded way of me explaining how stress can create a downstream depression of your metabolism, really, and also make fat loss in general a little more difficult. Okay, but I'm not stressed, you say. A lot of people say that they say, they're happy and they don't worry about things and they don't feel stressed, and that's fantastic. But psychological stress isn't the only type of stress that exists. It can be psychological, but it can also be physiological, perceived, and biochemical. So, with that in mind, I thought I'd throw out some tips that you might find useful. There are some things you can do to help control your stress levels a little more. Firstly, control your blood sugar. If your blood sugar drops too much and you go into a state of hypoglycemia, your body will see this as a state of alarm and upregulate cortisol output to break down tissue from the body to turn into sugar to maintain a normal blood sugar level and stabilize things again. So you don't want this to occur. To safeguard that, what I would suggest doing is eating more protein and vegetables, and also replace refined grains, wheat, and other sugary foods with complex carbohydrates like potatoes, sweet potatoes, quinoa, brown rice, legumes, and other whole grains. To have low blood sugar is to put your body in a state of stress, that they're one and the same in that respect. So for people with diabetes or people in a state of adrenal burnout, you need to be very, very careful with how you manage your intake of food and pay attention to signs of low blood sugar. You should really make efforts to catch it before it happens by eating more appropriate dietary choices throughout the day, getting enough protein and not too much refined carbohydrate. Okay, so number 2, eat enough food. Yeah, that's right, even for weight loss. Far too many people are overly restricting food with a mind to try to speed up weight loss. And I have this battle with people all the time. But if your calorie consumption drops too low, you end up backing yourself into a corner. Your body will essentially be shunted into a state of panic. To lose fat, you've got to coax the fat off. So start low, go slow. Small reductions are better than large reductions. Number 3, get enough good quality sleep. Number 4, exercise. Of course, we mentioned that earlier. Exercise also increases the activity of your body's natural control of inflammation and oxidative stress. So as long as the exercise isn't too hard. So what I would suggest is if you're not exercising already, start an exercise program which falls in the moderate level of intensity. So it's hard enough that it actually invokes a change and leads to some results, but it's not so hard that you can't recover from it. Number 5, eat a well-rounded diet to prevent nutrient insufficiencies. And by well-rounded, I mean that every day you get some vegetables, fruits, animal protein, healthy fats from things like seeds, nuts, olive oil, avocados, and some carbohydrates from legumes, starches, whole grains, fruits, of course. Some of you will need less, some of you will need more. The carbohydrates, that's very individual. And number 6, whilst we're on the subject of carbohydrates and grains, which are a common culprit for food sensitivities, you should also rule out foods you may have a sensitivity or an intolerance to or be allergic to. A lot of people don't know the difference. Lactose intolerance is an example of an intolerance. Non-celiac gluten sensitivity, where you don't have celiac disease, but you've got gluten sensitivity, that's an example of a sensitivity. And when it comes to an allergy, a nut allergy, that's an allergy. But regardless of whichever it is, you are putting your body into a state, either lesser or more, but even so, a state of stress. So you can run food sensitivity panels, or an easier and less expensive option would be to do an elimination diet for about 4 weeks, and then one by one add the foods that you've eliminated back into your diet and see whether it changes anything. And if it negatively changes things, then the food that you recently added back in is probably one that you want to avoid. And one more, while I think of it, rule out the presence of any hidden pathogens that may be causing low-grade inflammation and an immune response in your body. So bacterial and parasitic infections are something to potentially investigate. We often don't know they exist because we don't get gastrointestinal symptoms, and the same can be said for chronic viral infections such as Lyme and co-infections, which once again we don't always actively feel in the sense of a full-blown response, but so you may just feel achy, tired, unenthusiastic about things, a little depressed, not as vital and energetic as you once were. Maybe your performance in the gym is going down. There could be a number of symptoms, but if you can't pinpoint why you're not feeling as good as you once did, that this may be something to look into. And these infections can be tested for, but to know what to look for, you need to be working with the right professional. So anyway, went off on a bit of a tangent there at the end, but that's enough for now. I hope this has helped. Thanks for watching.